first readers, so we're
All right.
let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We got a quorum. Good. I don't
Gets there or not. Yeah, it's at the bottom of the front page there. Okay, I just want to make sure, even though my name is on it, it's,
Is he here to
yes,
present? Okay. Where's Lee? All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's a little after 1:30. We have a quorum present, so I'm going to call this meeting of the full committee, Ways and Means, to order. Welcome to the committee members. Thank you for being here on otherwise what ought to be a day off for you, so your attendance is especially appreciated. We have a very ambitious agenda today, so I think we don't have any first readers, thank goodness, so without any further ado, Representative Golick, if you would, please, sir, you're recognized to present the Governor's House Bill 195, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Ways and Means Committee, and on behalf of Governor Sonny Perdue, thank you again for this opportunity to present House Bill 195 for your consideration. House Bill 195 is a straightforward proposition. What it proposes to do is to incrementally increase the amount of retirement income that would be excluded from state income taxation. That would begin in tax year 2009, where the first $65,000 of retirement income would be excluded. That goes up to $100,000 in tax year 2010, to $150,000 in 2011, up to $200,000 in tax year 2012, and then does away with it completely, or excludes retirement income completely by tax year 2013. The estimated impact by tax year 2000, tax revenue decrease impact by tax year 2013 is $142 million, $142 million approximately, according to the Department of Audits. That is money in the administration's estimation that would be surpluses at that time, otherwise spent. The administration's approach would be, and is right now, as opposed to spending that money, to return it to the people in our state who have contributed the most over the course of their lives to our well-being, obviously our seniors, age 65 or older. That really is the gist of the bill, Mr. Chairman. In subcommittee, we had a good dialogue, lots of good questions. We had a presentation by Mr. David Vitek of the Pulte Home Corporation, who was their company is building, I believe, a 3,600 home retirement community in North Spalding County, and he gave very interesting testimony about the economic development impact of a measure like this. It's his experience and that company's experience that in the states that they've been doing business, that this particular type of measure does a great deal in terms of spurring economic development, keeping seniors here in Georgia, as opposed to giving them a reason to go to Florida, go to South Carolina, other retirement havens. And specifically, there was one statistic that he mentioned that really resonated with me, and that was a measure like this over the course of time. For every person who is here in one of those communities, approximately 3 jobs statistically is created from that. And of course, that's just the lifeblood of our economy, creating jobs. That's something that everybody here on the committee, Democrats and Republicans alike, know that is very near and dear to the governor's heart: economic development and creating jobs. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions if I can, and if I can't, I'll tell you and I'll get the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Florida. 25, who's that? Chair recognizes Representative Flood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Golick, I just had a question of clarification.
Sure.
With regard to this, I think this is obviously a well-intended, well-meaning initiative to exempt seniors from taxation on their retirement income. If, for example, my mother or father who retired without a nest egg and is living on Social Security and now has to work somewhere to earn a living, and they're over 65, which a lot of Georgians are now faced with that dilemma of having to work after their normal retirement years, why would we not exempt their income beyond the $4,000 if the intention is to exempt seniors from the ogre of state income tax, why not exempt those dollars that are earned as well as those retirement dollars?
That's certainly something that we can, look at. That's a legitimate question. I think in order to answer that question, I have to take a giant step back and really take a look at where we are now, and more to the point, like everything else we do, what we're doing here isn't so much for the here and now, but it's for 20 years from now. 20 years from now, we want the state of Georgia to be a retirement haven. We want our seniors to stay here, and we want to give people a reason to go ahead and move from other states here. When people talk about retirement income, it's very important to understand that's basically anything other than earned income. So whether you're making $20,000, $25,000, or $200,000, if you're saving in any way, shape, or form, if you get a pension, even if you have just interest income at the time of retirement or age 65 under the bill, that would be exempt from state income tax over the course of time, and then, of course, completely by tax year 2013. Additionally, this provision also goes ahead and incents savings. Right now, we are a debtor society, I believe. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the level of consumer debt in this country is at astronomical levels. The level of foreclosures is at astronomical levels, including individually here in Georgia. This measure provides an incentive for citizens to save. If we get this on the books now, people of different generations, and of course it affects people differently, whether if you're 65 now, or you're 40 years old, or people that may be 25 years old now. It creates an incentive for savings so that people can be protected, or they can protect themselves, I should say, with the help of state government, with the help of the General Assembly, upon their retirement. Can we take a look at a provision that will allow for more of an exclusion beyond the $4,000 of earned income that we have right now? Sure we can. And over the course of time, incrementally, especially perhaps at any kind of reform measure that we may consider over, or that this General Assembly and the executive branch may consider over the course of the next few years, I'm sure that'll be on the table. It's not an all-or-nothing proposition, Representative Flood. It has some merit to it. I think the governor's approach on this is to do it incrementally. There's an economic development aspect to this, which is important. It's a very important part of it, though not everything. But I know that he's open-minded on any other provision, including the one that you brought up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, any members? Representative Abrams.
Thank you. I raised this question in subcommittee, and I continue to be concerned about the revenue projection and the fiscal note. The fiscal note, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the fiscal note does not appear to take into account ancillary health costs that come with increasing your senior population. Specifically, I've got three concerns, which is one, that high-wealth seniors typically do not take out long-term care insurance, and they tend to not also have catastrophic health insurance, which leads to, in the event, not the first 5 years, but the first 10 years of their tenure in Georgia, if they have a catastrophic health event or a long-term health event, they will then become reliant upon state funds and federal funds for provision of health care costs. The second part is that usually in communities where you attract high wealth seniors, you also attract low wealth and low to moderate income seniors, because there's a tendency, as with any demographic, people of a certain demographic like to live near each other. So we're not simply attracting the high wealth individuals, we're actually going to be attracting and making the state more attractive to low wealth and low income seniors who come with different health challenges and different economic responsibilities and costs for, again, the state of Georgia. And the third part for me is the need then, when you've got a high density of a specific demographic, particularly one that requires a great deal of health consideration, that requires then the creation and the construction of new facilities, which are typically funded by state and local governments. My concern is that this revenue projection, it shows that there's a $142 million cost to us over the next 10 to 15 years, but it doesn't anticipate the cost that the state of Georgia will incur as an ancillary matter over the next 10 to 15 years. And if you could speak to that, I would appreciate it.
I'll address that directly. I understand what you're saying about the $142 million, but what that doesn't consider, Representative, is the economic growth and the increased dollars that will come in as a result of the measure, which I'd love to sit here and say it will create X amount of dollars, but I don't have that number, and at the end of the day, I am not going to make it up. but I feel very, very confident in saying that from an economic development standpoint, it will more than pay for itself quicker than I think any of us realize. From a care standpoint, whether it's with high income or with low to intermediate range income, I would go back to what the chairman said during the subcommittee in his response when the point was brought up. At that point, you've got people who are Medicare eligible, if I'm not mistaken, and as a result, those people will be taken care of under the Medicare umbrella anyway. With regard to the long-term care insurance, my understanding is, and I do work in insurance, but not specifically long-term care area. What I have seen is, my understanding, however, is that the higher in wealth you do go, the more likelihood it is that those individuals will purchase long-term care health insurance. More to the point, as we have more people now in our economy, well, again, going back to whether you make $25,000 or $250,000, people are, while we do have a large amount of consumer debt, we also have a 401k generation. We do have people, regardless of what they're making, that are putting money away. And as a result, they're being introduced to a wealth of financial products, including 529 plans for their kids for school, long-term care health insurance, because they're learning from their employers, whether it's small business, large corporate, depending on how their insurance works, that there are opportunities to go ahead and take care of oneself with degrees of variation depending on the kind of product you want. So when I hear it from an income standpoint, I don't make the determination, the governors make the determination right away that just because someone has a particular income level that is below an affluent level, that they're not going to be able to take care of themselves. In fact, those folks right now, just like everybody else, are making decisions about their future. The generation in this country, statistically, that is growing at the largest percentage nationally is the population, I believe, that is over 80 years old. Mm-hmm. As a result, people are being compelled, just by pure nature, to take a look at their lives and see, where do I stand? And there is more of an awareness, we believe, about where am I going to be 20 years from now? Is my retirement going to last? Yes or no? What's my care going to look like at that point? And as a result, I believe more people are actually exploring long-term care insurance needs now than they ever have in the past.
Further inquiry?
No, thank you.
Other members of the committee have a question for the author? Seeing none, what's the desire of the committee?
Second.
I have a motion by Chairman Mills to pass. I have a second by Chairman Sims and others. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
No.
All right. I think I heard two. Is that right? The record will reflect 2 nays. And the motion carries. We'll submit this to rules, Mr. Floor Leader, and we appreciate your being here with us today. And I would also say I got ahead of myself a bit. Chairman Martin Scott of the Income Tax Subcommittee would have reported this favorably to the full committee had I been paying attention to. I don't know, Mr. Chairman.
On behalf of the governor, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Chairman Scott, members of the committee.
Thank you. All right. I know. Chairman Royal, do you have a report for the full committee on House Bill 453, please, sir? What number are you down there to? 17. You're on.
Mr. Chairman, the Committee on Ad Valorem Tax met yesterday and recommended do pass by committee substitute House Bill 453.
Chair recognizes Chairman Calvin Hill, please, sir, to present your bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Today I bring before you House Bill 453 on its latest substitute version, which you should have. That's LC 186345 ERS. Make sure we're all on the same substitute. The one I just received from Legislative Council was 186345 ERS. That was the substitute we did in committee yesterday.
That's what I have in my file.
We all there? Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This bill is amended and re-amended, is basically a bill to provide some limited liability for agritourism professionals that are offering agritourism activities. As many of you know, farming has changed tremendously. We now have agritourism as a developing industry in many areas that used to be farming communities, which are now approaching urban areas. There's been a transition of things, whether they be corn mazes, pick your own berry farms, cut your own Christmas trees, pumpkin patches, etc. And they really never quite fit into any of the previous definitions in areas where you now have, if you will, city folks and a lot of children, school children, that are coming onto farm areas that are not familiar with some of the hazards, and these farmers needed to be protected with some additional limited liabilities. And this bill simply redefines agritourism, provides your agritourism professional designation, and talks about the inherent risks of agritourism as an activity, and limits the liability except in the various sections which are called out on page 2, items 1 through 7 over onto page 3, and requiring every agritourism facility to post a large sign again telling the participants of the dangers of agritourism. If you're out on a farm, you're going to be walking across rough ground. You might trip and fall. If you're going to be interacting with some of the animals, there's a possibility there might be a chance of some negative interaction. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would look forward to any questions you might have.
Any questions for the author of this legislation? Members of the committee, any questions? Okay, seeing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Move to pass.
I have a motion from Chairman Royal, seconded by Chairman Williams. Any further discussion? We have a motion to pass House Bill 453. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. We'll submit this bill to rules. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Do we have anything? Okay. Chairman Lewis with us? Yeah. Chairman Lewis, do you have a report to the full committee on House Bill 407? Or Chairman Martin, either one. I'm not sure which you all may. It may be the other one. So. What number are you? I'm sorry. Got it. You should be on.
Mr. Chairman, we report out of Sales and Use Tax Subcommittee House Bill 407, LC 254742 for consideration with a due pass recommendation.
Chair recognizes Representative England to present the bill, please. House Bill 407.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Chairman McCall had asked me to step in for him today. He was trying to spread a little bit of fertilizer back on the farm before the rain hits this afternoon. So, first things first sometimes.
That's the truth.
Yeah. Oh, man,
I don't even want to know how either.
Fertilizer up here.
We're trying to figure out a way to effectively package this, what's handed out up here, to actually get it back to the farm.
You're losing
House Bill
votes.
407 this afternoon deals with the sales and use tax exemption on electricity or fuels used in dairy production. This only takes and is exempt on buildings such as the milking parlor, the freestall barns, calf barns and such. It doesn't exempt the offices, center pivots, any other energy that's used as far as in tractors or farm vehicles there on the farm. Georgia is one of the few states in the southeast that still has this in place. South Carolina, Florida, Texas, Missouri all do not have sales tax on these fuels. North Carolina has a discount on the electricity and a tax exemption on other fuels. 60% of our milk is shipped to Florida. Florida is a deficit milk production state, and so it puts us at a decided competitive disadvantage that these the sales and use tax be included. We're looking at a total impact to the state budget of approximately $262,000. I know that there's a fiscal note attached that is significantly higher than that. However, it's our belief that what they have done is included all fuels, including those used in tractors and vehicles and everything else on the farm also. We're just talking about the buildings and actual facilities that are used in production. Currently, Georgia has about 283 dairies left. At one time, I would dare say that Barrett County alone, where I'm from, probably had 283 dairies in it back in the 40s and 50s. But our numbers have dropped considerably. The cows that take up space on the farm don't call the sheriff in the middle of the night. They don't require use of fire vehicles and things like that a lot of other people and things do. So, we feel like that it's a competitive advantage for our farmers, yet also it's an advantage for the citizens in the state of Georgia to have land remaining in agricultural use. You have just a quick little table, I think, in front of you. It was handed out a few minutes ago, dealing with the energy cost per hundredweight. Milk sales are sold in hundredweight lots. There's approximately 12 gallons to a hundredweight, and you'll see the varying price of energy used per hundredweight of production in 3 dairies that were just a sample taken there. I would tell you real quickly that the cost of production currently in the state of Georgia is between $15.25 and $15.31 per hundredweight. The Federal Milk Marketing Order number 7 for January of 2007 set the price received at the farm at $15.49 per hundredweight. So that's 18 to 24 cents margin per hundredweight of milk. If these exemptions are allowed or are passed out of the House and the Senate and signed by the governor, we'll be looking at basically raising that margin from 2.5 to 3 times excuse me, what farmers are actually making today. And that's the money that they use then to turn around and put back into capital equipment, send their kids to college, build homes, that sort of thing. Mr. Chairman, I will stop at this point and see if there are any questions.
Any member of the committee have a question for the presenter? You must have just done a bang-up explanation job.
That is just too much stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I would have to say that. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Move to pass.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion by the committee? I don't see any lights and don't hear anybody. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. If you would let Chairman McCall know that his bill is in rules. Wherever you went, he's there. Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Okay, Chairman Scott, do you have a report to the full committee on House Bill 441, the Damas Highway?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
What number? I'm sorry. There you go, please.
Mr. Chairman, HB 441, LC 149606. I represent Floyd. Received a due pass recommendation on February 28th, 2007.
Chair recognizes Representative Floyd. Please present his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, House Bill 441 would repeal certain provisions that we passed in 2005 in House Bill 488. At the time we passed House Bill 488, it was from the actuarial and fiscal note that it was revenue neutral. It was not any big amount. But after getting into the meat of it for the last year, we realized that it was significant, and that's why we are back with a new fiscal note and asking to repeal certain provisions in the 2005 bill. Current law requires that corporations allocate direct and indirect expense on U.S. obligations. This amendment provides that corporations deduct only direct expense. In short, if the amendment contained in House Bill 441 is adopted, it would decrease some tax. We have, from the data that we have received from the fiscal note and from the Georgia Bankers Association and community bankers and the accounting firms, that we're presently looking at somewhere around $7 million alone. And that is the majority of it. Like I say, it was a misunderstanding, and we did not understand the bill in the 2005 and was led to believe by the fiscal note that it was only a small, significant amount. These obligations, U.S. obligations, is derived from banks investing in obligations, notes and all. Normally, they don't like to invest a good percentage of their portfolio in U.S. obligations. They try to make loans, and that's where the profitability is. But at times, they have to participate in U.S. obligations, and so that is where we are on that. Like I say, we were thinking it would be a small amount, but it was not, and it was a significant amount.
Actually, as I recall, Representative Floyd, the fiscal note that accompanied House Bill 488 in 05 actually, you said revenue neutral and very close to that, but it estimated maybe $1 million.
Maybe $1 million. So they did not have the actual information to compute it, and they said approximately $1 million.
And now that they do, they estimate on the low side $12.5 million. So we actually were asked to act on legislation with erroneous data that was provided to us, and that's the major reason we're repealing this. It was never an intention of this body to pass a gigantic tax increase on our banking system, because we were misled in a sense by the estimates. We
were misled originally in 2005 on House Bill 488.
And now that the data is available, it clearly is a substantial amount.
Right.
Okay. Are there any questions for the author of this legislation? I see a couple. Who's at 26?
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Knight.
One, I guess, a question to the author and maybe also to the chairman. Looking at the bill, looking at the effective date of this would be January 1 of 08. In doing this, this is also subject the banks in this case to another tax year of this. Maybe ask for the chairman's advice or author's advice, and maybe looking at this section and seeing if we can make the effective date back to January of 07.
I would have no objections to that, because that would not change anything. Taxes on 207 has not been computed yet and applied, and that would just be a beginning of a new year. It would not be retroactive as far as any back taxes are concerned.
You gentlemen may want to offer that amendment at the appropriate time. That's after we have a motion and a second. I'll give you the opportunity to offer an amendment if you so choose. Chair recognizes Chairman Mills.
Mr. Chairman, I'll pass. I was going to bring up the same point that Representative Knight just brought up, and at the proper time, I'd like to second his amendment.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other questions? Just make sure everybody understands this has to do with the deductibility of interest expense in a bank when it's allocated indirectly to interest-free investment vehicles. It's a very complicated area of the law. It's easy to be confused, and it's just really methodology of allocation. And all we're doing is putting the law back the way it was before we changed it in '05, given the wrong information on which to base our judgment. Is that any further questions? Okay, what's the will of the committee?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Now would be the appropriate time to recognize Mr. Knight for any amendments you might want to propose. 26? You're on.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose an amendment to amend line 15, page 2, amend section 3, line 15, and change the date January 1, 2008 to January 1, 2007.
Okay, the gentleman proposes the amendment change to... Please.
Better if you gave this bill a standard governor's effective date, and then at the end say, and this act shall apply with respect to all tax years beginning on or after January 2007. If you do it that way, the bill is not retroactive. You can't make the bill effective for January 1, 2007. But the standard governor's effective date falls follow the bill January 1, 2007.
Okay, could you give me that language again?
Yes, you have to change it to the standard wording. This act shall become approved on signature by the governor or become a signature without such approval and shall apply with respect to all taxable years beginning on or after January 1, 2007.
Did you get that?
The same
Okay.
difference, it's just not making it retroactive.
Everybody hear and understand the amendment? Any questions about the amendment? Any discussion on the amendment? All right, I have the gentleman's motion to amend. I hear a second.
There's a second, and I move to waive print.
Okay. If we don't have to, if we don't amend until we see, but if the print will be any objection to waiving print if the amendment is successful. Hearing none, print will be waived. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries amended accordingly, unanimously. Any further discussion about the bill? All right, we have a motion do pass now as amended with print waived and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Unanimously passes, and it will be
Thank you, Mr.
submitted to
Chairman.
rules. Thank you. Okay. Let's see, where was that? Is Chairman Willard with us? Chairman Willard, is he in the room?
They're still going. Yeah.
Okay.
They got a same number of bills we got.
Okay. Chairman Royal, do you have a report to the full committee on House Bill 222, please?
Yesterday, and we received a do pass recommendation by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Mitchell, please, to present his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Glad to be able to present to you, in my opinion, some great legislation. Certainly what this bill will do is will prevent a tax commissioner and or his staff from purchasing property that was seized as a result of delinquent taxes in the county in which they preside. It now provides for a misdemeanor offense and a fine not to exceed $1,000. And, of course, any sale, transfer, acquisition of interest in any real property would be considered void. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Any questions for the author of this legislation? Yes, Chair recognizes Chairman Martin.
Gentleman yield for a question. And this is a friendly one, Representative Mitchell. I think I understand what you're after, and I don't want to put words in it, but we don't. You're trying to avoid a situation whereby somebody in the tax commissioner's office would have inside knowledge, if you will, toward purchasing delinquent taxes before, they might have knowledge before the general public. Is that correct?
Certainly, that is correct. That is one of the aspects, certainly.
But even if this would prohibit the purchase even in an open bid situation, correct?
From that tax commissioner in that county, yes.
Okay. Even so, they would be unable to do so even as a member of the general public would be.
For tax property seized as a result of delinquent taxes in that county only, yes.
Well, no, I understand. I just want to make, and that's your intent. You're not
right.
You're not only concerned with them being the early entrant into the market, if you will. You'd rather them not have access to that purchase, the ability to participate in that purchase at all.
That is correct. And then let me also add that in this bill, and actually your concern was well vetted in the subcommittee, the class of citizen that would be most affected by this would be tax commissioners, and I might add that the Georgia Society or Coalition of Tax Commissioners has endorsed this bill.
Okay. Well, they have a choice to be a tax commissioner or not and to participate, and it's not like we're taking a right of purchase away from them otherwise in the state. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Tumlin, are you at 11? Chair recognizes Representative Tumlin.
Yes, Representative Mitchell, on line 15 we got directly or indirectly. Would that be saying if they own, say, a sub-S corporation or corporation, that corporation would be prohibited from doing such too?
Talking to counsel, they felt that would be an indirect relationship, yes.
Thank you.
27, is that, oh, good. Hey, Chairman Jones.
Yes, will you yield?
Certainly.
My understanding is that some tax commissioners do have as a part of their compensation, that they receive I guess you could say, a percentage bonus for the amount of delinquent taxes that they collect, or would this prevent that?
No, it would not. We're only talking about the acquisition, purchase of real property.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
25. Okay. Representative Flood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Mitchell, I applaud you for bringing this legislation to our attention. And it just so happens that the chairman of the Georgia Tax Commissioners Association is the tax commissioner in the county where I live. And I know that he has been supportive of this bill and believes that this is good legislation that would avoid the improprieties that might be observed if a tax commissioner who is responsible for executing those foreclosure proceedings actually profits personally from those kinds of proceedings. And
certainly.
So I think that what you're doing here is commendable.
Well, I appreciate your comments and certainly welcome more of the same from the other committee members.
Thank you, Representative Flood. Chair recognizes Representative Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly understand the intent, and I'm just thinking through the process here, and it's not only is it tax commissioner, it's any person employed, but it says they shall not buy or profit, and I guess buy is what I'm focusing on a little bit, any real property sold by the county, and that to me could be read as any property sold at any time in the past. And and there are a lot of folks who do bid on property, who fix it up, and then who flip it in some way, and if it's resold and a tax commissioner or any person employed were to rebuy that from somebody who had bought it in a delinquent stage, to me it looks like they would be penalized for that.
You know, that concern, once again, was well vetted in the subcommittee, and I thought that we had adequately addressed that, but if the committee should feel comfortable with perhaps I remember there was a phrase in there at one time, any present employee of the present tax commissioner, if some members of the tax committee will recall. That is not our intent. The intent is present employees of the present tax commissioner.
The intent would be that they're not buying a current delinquent property. I guess the way it's worded, somewhat I read it as if a property had been delinquent in a previous time, because it says buy any property that had been sold by the county for this purpose. It sort of restricts them from purchasing property that at some point had a lien on it.
I don't read that as the intent of the bill.
I know it's not the intent.
But if in fact you feel that there would be some language that could clarify that to bring your comfort level, we're certainly willing to entertain that.
Further inquiry? Okay. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Mitchell. This is I was on the subcommittee there, and I think I see what Representative Graves is saying here. It does concern me a little bit, and it is something I hadn't thought about. But is it your intent that this legislation also cover property that is sold after auction, or is it your intent only to cover the sale at auction, or how pervasive are you wanting this to be?
The sale at auction.
Okay.
While
Are you
they're
aware
employed.
that if the property does not sell at auction, it's my understanding that it goes to the county, then it goes into real estate hands usually. I may be wrong, but I believe it's the law that goes into real estate hands and be sold.
I'm not concerned about that. I'm just talking about the impropriety or the appearance of impropriety that could come about as a result of the abuse of some discretion that the tax commissioner has, and perhaps the advanced knowledge that the staff may have.
I don't have further inquiry,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
25. Who's that? Representative Flood.
Back to Representative Scott's question, I believe that that's addressed on line 17, where this refers to property purchase. Basically, the commissioner or employees thereof may purchase property sold for delinquent taxes.
That's absolutely correct.
So it's not property that's sold in another environment. It's not property that's sold at an auction and then that's resold at a later point. It's only the property that is sold for delinquent taxes at the time of the taxes are delinquent.
Essentially, we have a new owner at that time, Representative Scott.
Okay. Any other questions? This bill's had a history of kind of language tweaking since its very inception. I think there's been a great effort to make sure it's understood. I think the true intent of the bill is obviously elimination of even possibility of impropriety, but more so so that somebody who manipulates when and how the sales are conducted cannot take advantage of that power to their own self-serving ways, and I think it certainly does that. I don't know that it removes totally any vision of impropriety, but I don't know that we can legislate morality in that sense, but this certainly is a good effort at that, in my opinion. Is there any other questions of the author? Yeah, C-125. Who's that?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
If it would be appropriate to clarify the questions that we've been discussing, on line 15, if we inserted after the word property, after the word sold, and insert at auction.
Public auction?
At public auction, yes, sir.
You gentlemen might want to offer that amendment at the proper time. It certainly sounds like that has a clarifying ring to it.
Okay.
Further inquiry of the author of the legislation. Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Move to pass.
I have a motion due pass by committee substitute.
Second.
And a second. At this time, if anybody would like to offer any amendments, Chair recognizes Representative Flood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to offer an amendment on line 15 after the word sold to insert the words at public auction.
Okay, make sure everybody understands the amendment. Line 15, which begins with interest in, comma, by, comma, or profit from any real property sold, add thereafter at public auction by the county for which and continuing. Everybody understand the amendment? Any discussion on the amendment? I have a motion for an amendment. Do I have a second? Second. Any further discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Amendment carries. I have a motion to waive printing. Second. Any objection to waive printing? Okay. We now have a motion in front of the committee to do pass House Bill 222 as amended with by committee sub now with printing being waived. Any further discussion? Seeing no lights or hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Carries unanimously. Thank you, Representative Mitchell.
I truly thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. This has certainly been a cooperative process, to say the least. All right.
All right, now 141, is that the, 272. Chairman Martin, do you have a report from the Sales Tax Subcommittee on House Bill 272? What's your 12? I'm sorry. There we go.
Mr. Chairman, Sales Tax Subcommittee heard House Bill 272 by Chairman Lewis and passed it out with the due pass recommendation by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Lewis to present his bill. You're 24.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 272, just to briefly remind the members of the committee, it started out as the bill that would exempt the state sales tax on energy that went into the manufacturing process. And if any of you saw the fiscal note on that, it had a fourth-year fiscal impact of $141 million. Of course, in my opinion, I didn't think that was very stout in light to the overall budget, but there were others who, of course, had concerns about it, and those who did were able to work with me very satisfactorily, I think, and to come up with what's before you today, which is a substitute to House Bill 272. And what that does, it still is only affecting the state sales tax only, no effect on local sales tax, state sales tax only. And on natural gas, number 2 fuel oil, and electricity, it is setting a price cap with current prices, today's prices on those 3 items, and it mentions the price of those items in here. And if these prices of any of these items increase beyond the amount that's in this legislation here, that amount above this will not be subject to a state sales tax. As long as these prices remain where they are in this legislation, or if they decrease, it is subject to a state sales tax. It's just a cap, a stopgap measure, if you will, to give some certainty and security to our manufacturers out there that they will not be subject to windfall taxes when energy prices, particularly natural gas, takes an enormous spike, such as they did a few years ago when we were experiencing some bad weather in the Gulf regions. That's basically what it does and all it does, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be happy to try and answer any questions if I can.
This legislation, opinion of the chair, is long overdue. It's really so budget sensitive it can't be as good as it really needs to be, but I certainly commend the author. I know that you have This just didn't come about an hour and a half ago. This is about 2 years of very hard work on your part in research and probably a lot of midnight oil. And I certainly commend the gentleman. It's a compromise at this time, but I hope we're going to be able to do better on this. Certainly have a lot of people in our audience to thank, too, for this helping refine this legislation. But it does, I hope, send a signal to potential economic development candidates for Georgia, and also those folks that we really owe even a greater allegiance to that are out there in our communities now, paying the taxes and going to work every day and creating the jobs and doing it all right and honest like most Georgians do. And I think it's our sworn duty to make sure we look after them on a first priority basis, and you've certainly done that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Everybody could, Chairman Lewis. Are there any questions for the author of this legislation? You must have explained it very well, too. I guess it's just secondhand to you.
Well,
anymore, but,
that's rare.
What is the pleasure of the committee? I have a motion, and I have a second. Actually, committee sub, by committee sub. Any further discussion? Seeing none or hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Chairman Lewis, I happily tell you it passed unanimously. All right. Chairman Lewis, while you're hot, you have a report to the full committee on House Bill 413. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Chairman Martin.
He's got the list.
I have a list. Bill 13 passes tax safety this afternoon. Do pass recommendation for committee.
Representative Geisinger. Proposition.
Chair recognizes Representative Geisinger to present his bill. Please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. House Bill 413, which is 1816.
Gentlemen, suspend just for 1 second. We're passing out a committee, so I want everybody to have in front of them before we start. I'm sorry. My fault, not yours. Everybody got one? We're looking at substitute to House Bill 413. Everybody have it in their possession. Anybody that doesn't, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is LC 186355S. What the bill does is it makes it possible for a nature center that is a 501c3 that is going to expend in excess of $8 million over a period of time from April of this year through June 30th of 2009 to be exempt up to $350,000 in taxes. This, in effect, would affect the Chattahoochee Nature Center, who is about to do that expansion. And for those of you that are not familiar with the Nature Center, last year they had over 30,000 Metro Atlanta students go through that Nature Center. And this year they're on a pace of better than 35,000. It's a magnificent facility on the Chattahoochee River, and they're going to make it even better.
Any questions for the author of this legislation? I only have one. Are you 100% confident that the description of the Nature Center in your bill now really only describes the Chattahoochee Center?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay. Any other questions for the author? Seeing or hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee? I have a motion and a second. Motion do pass and a second by committee sub. House Bill 413. Any further discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Report that to rules. Representative Geisinger. I'm sorry, Representative Graves, are you ready? Who's either Chairman Martin or Chairman Lewis who's got a report on House Bill 294, please?
Mr. Chairman, your Sales Tax Subcommittee would like to report out to you with the due pass recommendation HB 294, LC 186295S.
Chair recognizes Representative Graves long overdue to present his bill, please.
Members of the committee, House Bill 294 is a similar bill to one that we passed out last year and passed through the House and the Senate. And after that, we noticed that there was one of those unintended consequences. And after the process, upon my recommendation, the governor vetoed House Bill 1272 last year, just so that we something didn't occur that we didn't want to occur at some point. So this year, this is the modified version that takes care of that unintended consequence. It basically deals with free health care clinics. There are about 30 in the state. They provide medical care to folks who have no insurance and who are under a certain poverty level. And they provide this service without any charge whatsoever. It's in the fiscal note last year, it was projected that they saved the state between $200 and $400 million a year in Medicaid costs. And so this exemption on sales tax, while there is an expense to the state and local communities, is certainly far outweighed by the benefit to our citizens in our local communities as well as our Medicaid dollars. So I'd ask that you would, again, support this, and let's see if we can get it through the House and the Senate again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions of the author 25? Is that Chairman Representative Flood? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Graves, I think this is great. What I particularly like is the ability to really calculate what the benefit is in real dollars, as opposed to what the cost is. So quite often we have a fairly good idea of what it's going to cost us, but we don't really get a good sense of what the benefit of return is. Just as a quick question, are there opportunities for additional health clinics of this sort to be brought online?
That's a great question, and something like this hopefully would encourage that. I believe if we had more free health care clinics throughout the state, our citizens would be better served, but there are barriers in the way, and one of the barriers are the supplies they have to purchase and sales tax that's computed on that, as well as doctors who are willing to give their service for free. So we hope this is one step towards encouraging more of those clinics throughout the state.
Chairman Lewis.
Representative Graves, yesterday in committee, I'm going to get to the governor's veto now. Yesterday in committee, it was presented to us that it was a sort of a hostile veto last year. Are you telling us now that it was a requested and friendly veto?
You know, it's unfortunate, and I apologize to the chair of sales tax for my delegate who represented me. But it was not hostile in no way. It was certainly something that was well communicated, and I did make the request just out of caution. And it was a difficult thing to do because it impacts my community and my district, but sometimes you have to do those difficult things if they're the right thing.
Thank you.
Any other hostile remarks? Certainly qualifies you, Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've asked the author, he's not going to go down and ask the governor to veto this one, is he?
No, sir, I certainly won't.
All kidding aside, I'd certainly want to commend the gentleman, the author, and really everybody that had anything to do with identifying an unintended consequence that was in the original bill. It could have been devastating to our healthcare system in general. And you're right. You did what was right. And even though that might have been personally painful for you and after a lot of hard work, it certainly demonstrates, at least to me, the integrity that you bring to the office and the people you serve here. For that, we're grateful.
Thank you.
Grateful for your hard work and commitment to get this done again. It is a safety net for an uninsured population that is increasing in a scary fashion in this state, and anything we can do to undergird and serve that population, I think it's the right thing for us to be doing, and I certainly am on your team on this. Any other comments or questions of the author? I don't see any. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Move to pass.
Second.
I have a motion from Secretary Martin Scott, do pass by substitute. I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Matter carries unanimously. Be reported in the rules, Representative Grace. Thank you. Let's see, where's this one? Richard, who's presenting this one? Okay. Chairman Royal, do you have a report to the full committee on House Bill 436, please, sir? What? Oh, your bill, excuse me, I'm sorry. Chairman Martin, do you have a report on House Bill 436 out of the Sales Tax Subcommittee?
And would like to report out House Bill 436, LC 186341S, to the full committee with a due pass recommendation.
Chair recognizes Chairman Royal to present the bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. This is a similar bill, except it does not deal with volunteer health clinics. This deals with federally qualified community health centers. There's about 50 of them across the state. The 2007 budget will create an additional 6 more. The state of Georgia puts up $250,000 each for these, and then they become federally qualified for payment. They serve the community health center of those that are low income and some that don't have insurance, but they served over 238,000 patients last year, and this is we made some changes yesterday that we told you we would do. We removed the language that state sales and use tax and services. We also have a repeal date on there. It's tightly drawn, so it only applies to the federally qualified community health centers, and we took out local taxes. The exemption only applies to state income, state sales tax. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions.
Any questions for the author of this legislation, members of the committee? I don't see any, so what's the pleasure of the committee?
Do pass.
I have a motion and a second. Any by committee substitute? Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously, Chairman Royal. Tax Reform Subcommittee. Chairman Graves of the Tax Reform Subcommittee, do you have a report to the full committee on House Bill 445?
Tax Reform Subcommittee met and discussed House Bill 445, and with a due pass for recommendation with the committee substitute, we passed it to the full committee.
Chair recognizes Chairman Royal to present House Bill 445.
Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. House Bill 445 corrects one of the best examples of an unintended consequence that I've seen. Last year we passed legislation which exempted property taxes for a Goodwill facility in Savannah. There's an out-of-state individual who has bought a lot of timberland in the state of Georgia, He's broken it up in small tracts. He came up with a charitable trust. He's made requests across some 15 or 16 counties in the state of Georgia asking for ad valorem tax exemptions. This is certainly not the legislative intent of the legislation we passed last year, and this attempts to correct that. I think some $64 million worth of property has been requested for exemptions, and this could set a dangerous precedent to be allowed for those who want to form charitable trusts across the state and put a lot of this property in there. So this corrects the language from the legislation last year.
Thank you. Any questions for the author of this legislation? House Bill 445. Any questions? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Do pass.
Got a motion, do pass, and a second. Further discussion? By substitute. Do pass motion by substitute. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Thank you. Chairman Scott or Chairman Parsons, either one with us? Secretary will read. Then is there a report from the Public Finance and Policy Subcommittee on House Bill 302?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, your Public Policy Subcommittee met on February 28, 2007 and gave a due pass recommendation to HB 302. And I think you have an LC. I'm not sure what that number is, Mr. Chairman, but we probably should clarify that for everyone.
All right. Chair recognizes Representative Munford to present his bill, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, committee, members of the committee. We are working off of LC 186276S. This bill was changed after going to the subcommittee to ensure that this bill only applies to the city of Conyers. This bill deals with the hotel-motel tax in the city of Conyers. The guts of the bill are found at the top of page 4, between lines about 1 and 6. Direct your attention especially to line 2. This is a new paragraph that is changing the amount of hotel-motel tax which could be levied in the city of Conyers only from 6% to 8%. It changes absolutely nothing about the way that any of these funds have been collected in the past or would continue to be collected and spent. All of the other changes are simply referencing the change that is made in the section that I just pointed out. I do want to take this opportunity to tell the committee a little bit about the International Horse Park that we have in Conyers. It was built for the 1996 Olympic Games by the city of Conyers without any state funds. At that time, there was an expenditure of over $100 million. I do not know what that facility is worth today, but I'm sure that it's worth more than $200 million today. It is a full-time venue for horses. There is also a nature park, riding areas. There's also areas for trail bikes and other events. We are in competition through that at that facility with national horse shows and other national events. We currently are hosting a 3-week-long horse show that recently decided to move to Georgia from the state of Florida. That show will bring in a great deal of money to our area and really all throughout metro Atlanta, because a lot of these people that come in for these horse shows, it's not unusual for them to want to stay in the Ritz-Carlton or anyplace else. This facility receives no state funding, and it only receives less than 1% of a SPLOST that we have in our county because it's part of the municipality, and the SPLOST that we do have goes through the city of Conyers. The most current estimate for tourism that is generated for the city of Conyers, we have several other attractions. There's a monastery there,
a number of other important attractions, Arabia Mountain, is that we have about $105 million per year in tourism. 75 million of that 105 can be directly attributed to the International Horse Park. We have a number of hotels and motels in our area. We have checked with all the ones that would be affected, and we could not find anyone who is in opposition to this particular piece of legislation. We currently have a dearth of hotel rooms in the area. It's very difficult to actually get a hotel room in Conyers, believe it or not. We have 2 hotels that have just been completed, and we have 3 that are seeking approval from the city for funding, and there are some that are building in other counties. Newton County, there's one I know that's being built down there as a direct result of the economic impact of this horse park. This particular piece of legislation has the benefit of the local and state, or has the support rather of local and state chamber of commerce. And I would ask for the committee's favorable consideration. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, Chair, I just want to make sure I understand the guts of the bill is to raise the hotel motel tax in the city of Conyers
2%.
by 2%. Is there any other tax consequence?
I am absolutely assured that there is no other possible consequence under this bill. Although, as we all know, I guess there can be unintended consequences, but we have tried to the best that we can to make sure that that's what we're doing.
Okay. Questions for the author? Chair recognizes Chairman Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Mumbert, I know that that Chairman Stevens, who chairs our Economic Development, had a number of questions about this bill. We happen to be suite mates, so and his daughter was in a car wreck, so he had to go back and take care of her. She's going to be fine, I think. But he not being here, had some questions, and I just wondered, were you able to meet with him and get his questions addressed?
I wasn't really sure that I completely understood what his questions are. I do have Mr. David Spann here who can talk to the mechanics of how the money is currently being spent, which would be the same way. With the chair's permission, if I could ask him to come up to talk about any of that. One of the questions I know revolved around whether or not some of this money was being spent for our conventions. What do we call it? What is it called? CVB, which we do have a CVB. I did not know that when I was talking to Representative Stevens, but there is a CVB. Mr. Chairman, may Mr. Spann come up to try and answer any of those
Actually, it's policy of this committee to have testimony only at the subcommittee level.
All right, that's fine.
But I don't mind you letting him whisper in your ear if you need to.
Come up here if you want. So these funds do go through the CVB. They have always gone through that. They will continue at exactly the same rate as they have before. There's nothing changing in the formula. It's simply asking to increase this. The idea is that with this increase, we are going to be able to fund expansion of the number of stalls that we have, which of course has this economic impact as far as the number of people that can be involved. And of course, the bill in the previous law, and I think this applies to just about every hotel motel tax, which I'm not an expert in, I must admit, across the state, there are certain requirements that part of it go to CVBs and these sorts of things. And this bill, as I understand it, is not changing anything that already exists.
Mr. Chairman, may I follow up?
You certainly may, Chairman Mills.
Earlier this session, we passed House Bill 374, which dealt with the beginning process of clarifying the hotel motel tax code section, and it is, as you stated, very complicated and complex. There are many exemptions, and one of my concerns with this bill is that, well, I understand it's a tax increase for your district only. However, if somebody from my district stays there, then they pay the tax increase.
Right.
The concern, though, is that I've started a process to clean up this code section, to clarify it, and we're about to add another exemption to the code section. And I guess my question is, why can't you use the current hotel-motel tax that is in place currently to do what you want to do, and why is it not enough?
The basic reason is it does not generate the funds that would give us the type of funds that we need to make the changes that we're looking to make. We've got part of it dedicated to a natural area and a nature center, and the main thing that we're looking for with this money is so that we can increase our stall capacity, which has that spillover effect of making it possible for us to draw bigger and bigger horse shows into the area. Is there anything else you want to say about that?
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Please continue.
I thought I heard you say that the state chamber had supported this, and it's just kind of unusual for the state chamber to take a position on a localized issue. I just wondered, did they take an official vote on this?
Let me correct myself on that. When we were here before, we understood that somebody at the state chamber had objected to the bill, and we called to find out. We could not find any objection from anybody at the state chamber. That's probably more accurate. Put it that way.
Mr. Chairman, if there may be some more questions. I'd just like to, at the proper time, I'd like to be recognized for a motion to table this until at least Representative Stevens can. I feel like I know he feels so strong about this, and I do too, as far as clarifying the code. I'm not opposed to what you're trying to do as far as in helping the equestrian out. I just want to make sure that in the process of helping out one particular district, we're not making the code more complex, that we just passed a bill to try to help clarify it.
Thank you.
I'll not recognize you for that motion at this time, but I may do so later. I want to give the other members of the opportunity to ask questions first, and then we'll get back to that. Vice Chairman Sims.
Mr. Member, my question to you may be oversimplifying things, but why doesn't the city of Conyers, or why doesn't your county just adopt a sales tax, a SPLOST, to do this?
We've already got a SPLOST, but under the formula for, and I'm not an expert in tax, but it's under the formula in SPLOST. As you know, the city only gets a portion of those funds. We have a SPLOST in place. Those funds contribute about less than 1% of the total budget to the horse park as it exists today.
Follow-up question.
Yes, please. Follow-up question.
I'm corrected. No SPLOST money goes to the horse park. We have a SPLOST in place, but the city does not get all of that money. It only gets a small portion.
I understand, but couldn't you do a referendum with that in particular in mind as part of the SPLOST? I mean, couldn't you do that without doing a motel hotel tax? I mean, that's what we do in our district. We try to stay away from the hotel motel taxes and use the SPLOST funds, and then make it a part of the referendum when we do that. My question, maybe it's more of a statement, but I just wondered why you wouldn't do that.
Well, I was asked to bring this particular piece of legislation by the city council here. The city of Conyers is not very large in population, and I don't know how a SPLOST would operate, or how much money it would create in that particular area. But the county does not own any of this horse park. This is strictly a city-owned facility.
Is it not true, though, that in a SPLOST and in the referendum you can set aside the amount of money that you need? Isn't that true?
I'm not an expert on SPLOST, Mr. Chairman. I apologize.
Chair recognizes Chairman Royal.
Mr. Mumford,
Yes.
A couple of years ago I served on a study committee for the hotel-motel tax, and we traveled across the state. And we did that because there was no uniform administration. We thought funds were being misapplied. But our study committee recommended that we try to come up with a uniform code section that, everybody ate out of the same trough. And this seems to me piecemealing that again. Do you feel that?
I understand that is a concern. All I can tell you is that I'm simply trying to raise the amount. I'm not doing anything about how the money is being appropriated. That's already in the law, and we're not changing that part of it.
You're changing the part, though, of the amount to be collected.
That's right.
And it's for only one jurisdiction only.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a follow-up comment on Chairman Mills' concern about it. I, too, received some communication today with Chairman Stevens that he feels like there's some unanswered questions that he's concerned about, and I out of respect for the chairman of the committee, would like to, I'll let Chairman Mills make that motion, but I concur with what his concern is to go ahead and table it, to satisfy the concerns of the chairman of the committee, Chairman Stevens.
Thank you. 27, who's that? Chairman Jones.
Representative Mumford, may I ask a question, please?
Yes.
My recollection is this is a fairly large horse park.
Yes, I think it's almost 1,000 acres.
And it is a large, is large relative to the size of the city of Conyers.
Correct.
And from what I'm gleaning from what you're saying, it's difficult with the Conyers tax base to fully and adequately expand it so that it can bring greater tourism dollars to the area, and that's driving this need or desire on the city's part to increase the rate, because it is, I guess you could almost say, a large burden in the sense of a burden on their tax base, because it is so large relative to not only the population of Conyers, but it's not a wealthy tax digest relative to some other cities in Georgia. Is that true?
That is absolutely true.
Thank you.
And there are, just from the fact that the city of Conyers invested $100 million into this facility in 1996 and has been paying that indebtedness and dealing with it, it's certainly not as if they're trying to fund this operation off of a hotel-motel tax. This is for a specific effort to try and improve our facility so that we can compete with other states, compete with other areas, and also so that we can attract more tourists.
One further question. And they constructed this and took this on as a result of the Olympics to help with the Olympics. Is that true?
Could you repeat the question?
It was designed and built because of the Olympics coming.
Absolutely.
And so they were trying to be helpmates to the state in providing a needed resource. They probably bit off a bit more than they could chew in the long run, given their tax base. And the tax base there has also changed over the last years since the Olympics, and it's not an easy. They have some challenges ahead of them, I believe.
That's right. I agree with the gentlelady. And I do think it's important for everybody to know here that we're not talking about a facility that's receiving any state dollars. This is not a state facility. It doesn't receive any state funds. It is operating there by the city of Conyers, and it is a real. It's the best economic development tool that we have in that portion of the eastern metro area.
Chair recognizes Representative Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm not certain whether a fiscal note would be required for a tax increase, but what, in your estimation, is the increase?
How much
would
would
it be annually?
$210,000 to $220,000 annually. That is annual.
And it's a 2% increase, was that?
That's right. We don't have that many. We're talking 6 hotels, 5 hotels. How many? About 14, I'm talking, in the whole city.
And back to Vice Chairman Sims' question about a SPLOS, do you know what a a SPLOST brings in annually there?
I don't have those figures. I might be able to tell you what it brings to the city. What I'm being led to understand, and what I do understand about the SPLOST, is the bulk of the money for a SPLOST, which we've already instituted a SPLOST, goes to the county, and the city only gets a much less percentage from what the county gets.
Okay, I guess just to follow up, it seems like it may be easier at times to look at that local route of a SPLOST that's $210,000 is not substantial, it seems like, when it comes to SPLOST oftentimes. So that might be a consideration.
But it certainly is for the city. And, of course, you got to understand that where you have a city that has this asset and the county doesn't have the asset, the county declined to participate at the time that this particular facility was built. The city made the expenditure. There's some competition there. And you might ask, what's the reason that the county would want to necessarily support a SPLOST dedicated to the horse park?
It seems there are a lot of issues between counties and cities right now before us. And
I will say this, they cooperate very well together. I'm not suggesting they don't.
Chairman Lewis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard some comment, you answered earlier that this complex is roughly 1,000 acres in the city?
1,400
acres. As far as the horse park proper, the facilities that are actually being utilized, how many acres does that consist of?
I'd say it's about 60, 120.
120 acres? But we've gone from 500 to 750 horse stalls that we have at this particular facility. Okay, so still it's around, 100 acres that is currently...
I think you said 120. That's 120. Just the barn areas. I'm sorry, none of you may not have ever been there. There were some Olympic venues. There's like a covered riding ring. There's all sorts of...
Well, you're right. I need to go visit because it sounded like it's something I'd really enjoy. But what I'm leading up to with that many acreage, has the city given any thought to the possibility of partnering with private interest, private tourism type interest to invest in the remaining acreage of that park that would complement both them and the park without?
Yes, they have. In fact, they have a private motel that is being operated there through an agreement with them. Now that was built, there's also a golf course there. There's a private motel that operates there on the property, and there are some apartment buildings that were built at the time of the Olympics that have since been sold off. So the city is not just sitting on that acreage, letting it go to...
So in some cases they sell off parcels perhaps, or in most cases they lease?
Yeah, the hotel is leased because it's up in the area where the golf area is.
I know I may be asking more than I need to, but the monies derived from such leases, are they put back into the facility, and that's still not adequately enough?
Right.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other lights on except for Chairman Mills, and I think the chair will recognize Chairman Mills for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, in light of the fact that Representative Stevens and Chairman Stevens' differences have not been at least tried to be worked through, on his behalf, I'd like to offer a motion that we table this and hopeful that something could be worked out and in light of the fact these code clarification issues I brought up earlier.
Okay, I have a motion to table and I have a second. Does anybody wish discussion on the motion to table House Bill 439?
302.
302. I'm looking at it right now. 302.
Substitute.
By substitute. Representative Flood.
Just as a point of clarification, Chairman Mills has referenced Chairman Stevens' questions. Are there, Representative Mumford, are there specific areas or issues that you're aware of that the chairman is not in agreement with you with regard to this bill?
You know, I hate to tell the committee this, but I spoke with him briefly yesterday. I was in some other committee meetings. There was something about whether or not we had a convention and visitors bureau, which at the time I was talking to him, I knew we had a welcome center, but I found out subsequently there's a convention and visitor bureau. I frankly must tell you, I'm not sure exactly what his concerns. The only concerns that I've heard deal more with the idea that, we need to take a look at this whole section, and we may be doing that in the future, and therefore we don't want to make a change in this particular one. That's sort of what I've been hearing about the situation. I'll be glad to meet with anybody to try to respond to any of the concerns that they have.
Further inquiry?
Please do.
That doesn't change substantively this bill. It's a philosophical discussion about whether we should pass a bill today in light of the fact that we're going to pass other bills in the future, but it doesn't change any of the substance of this bill, if I understand you.
Well, I can't speak for anybody else. I can say this. Whatever this bill does, I believe all it does is change a 6 to an 8. And there may be people here that are philosophically opposed to that, or that they want to do something different. But I've only been here a few years, but whenever I hear that something's going to happen next year or the year after, I get very nervous because it may not happen at all. So, that's my concern about the situation. This was brought to me by a local municipality. I think they have good reasons for what they've brought. I don't think there's any local opposition to this. I understand the gentleman's concerns about the policy situation here, but
Further discussion on the motion. We have a motion and a second before the committee. Chairman Martin.
Mr. Chairman, this question directed to the chair, if I may. If the motion to table carries today, does the chair intend to meet again where the gentleman would have an opportunity to have his bill heard, and will this gate him to make crossover day? I guess would a vote in favor of the motion to table keep the gentleman from having an opportunity to pass his bill? Is the chair comfortable with prognosticating the future in terms of that, in terms of your meeting schedule?
I can tell you for sure that this committee will meet probably at least twice before the 30th day. But for certain once. Now, but I can't guarantee what might happen in rules or what the rest of the process is. No.
So he would have. I just wanted to understand if technically a vote to table the gentleman's bill today would not necessarily prohibit him from having a hearing before this committee and him getting the rules. And we can't decide what the Rules Committee would do with the bill today or any other time we would release it, but he would have that opportunity to be heard in this committee again.
Right. It's my understanding that it's Monday will be the 28th legislative day, right?
Yeah, 28th day.
So
we
somewhat if we met on the 29th day, it could go to rules and be out on the 30th day.
Have to be on a supplemental calendar on the 30th day, or out on the 28th day. If technically speaking, I don't mean to belabor the point, but technically speaking, if we were to meet again and it were to come out of committee on Monday, it would be the same as coming out today, would it not? Because we can't report to the House until the House opens on Monday morning.
That's correct. So,
again, I'm not making the chair schedule, but if we were to meet Monday morning or Monday sometime, it would be the same as coming out today. If it passed either time.
Certainly my understanding at this time. Further discussion on the motion to table. 25 is?
Yes, sir. Again, I don't want to belabor the point, but just as a point of clarification and understanding, the hotel-motel taxes, local communities are allowed to use those taxes that they receive in a way that they believe is appropriate for their communities. I know in my district, Peachtree City had a hotel-motel tax that was used to fund payment on bonds for a tennis center that was specifically used for attractions and allow local residents to not only play tennis but for tennis tournaments to be hosted there. So it's not unprecedented that we've allowed hotel-motel taxes to be used for specific
entertainment venues of this sort.
Right, and I'm not changing anything about the way the current amount is being used. I'm simply changing the amount, which will, give us about a little over $200,000 more a year.
I don't mean to cut either party off, but the posture of the committee is discussion on the motion to table, and I'm not trying to be a judge and make a relevance objection, but is there any part of your question that has to do with the motion to table?
I just wanted to clarify, sir. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion to table? Seeing none and hearing none, all in favor of the motion to table signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Okay, I'd like a hand count for the ayes. One. Hand count for the ayes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. Is that 7? 8. Let me see them again, then, because I only saw 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 abstain, I presume. So let's see again. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Motion carries 8-7. So it'll be laid on the table, and we can entertain a motion to bring it off the table anytime the committee's in session.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, House Bill 141. Chairman Martin, do you have a report to the full committee on House Bill 141?
Subcommittee of Sales and Use Tax met several times on House Bill 141. Worked with the author to bring the version forward, the due pass recommendation, LC 186353S.
Okay. Chair recognizes Chairman Lewis to present House Bill 141. Please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would like to point out that House Bill 141 is Representative Bill Hembry's bill. He could not make it to the full committee meeting today, so he asked me to try and present this bill before the full committee for him. He did appear on 3 separate occasions before the Sales Tax Subcommittee to present this bill, and I think he did a very good job in explaining the bill and the merits as to why we should pass this bill. In addition to him presenting information, there were also students from various colleges around and universities around the state of Georgia, including some SGA presidents from some of our universities who were lobbying on behalf of this measure as well, and did a very good job, and very educational moment for those young folks that were down here. But basically what this bill does is, for a time certain beginning January 1 of 08 and ending December 31 of 09, it would remove the sales and use tax off of textbooks that's purchased for colleges, universities, post-secondary education, junior college, and technical schools. So basically, a textbook that is purchased for an institution of higher learning would be exempt from state and local sales tax. The fiscal impact is also attached and noted, and this fiscal note does include textbooks relating to those various institutions there. Mr. Chairman, that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of the bill. I'll be happy to try and answer any questions that members may have.
Any questions by members of the committee? It's not the author, but representing the author. Seeing none, what is the pleasure of the committee? Do I hear a motion?
Move to pass.
I got a do pass. I substitute. Do I have a second? Second. Okay, I do have a motion to do pass and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. It will be reported on to the Rules Committee. Next on the agenda will be the committee substitute to House Bill 329. And again, the chairman is in a CON meeting. That's the Austin Scott. I believe this came out of sales tax. Does anybody from sales tax? Or?
I'm here.
Okay. Can you get it for me there? Chairman?
Your committee on sales tax met on House. You want to report or
yes,
present?
Report, please.
Met on House Bill 329, and we recommend it to the full committee with a due pass recommendation by committee substitute.
If the committee will allow me, I'm going to speak for the chairman. Again, he is in a CON committee meeting right now. Basically, this had to do with a sales tax exemption on plastic containers that are used to ship food. These containers are being leased at this point in time. The paper container materials and sacks and bags or whatever they are being exempt at this point in time. But those plastic containers, because they were leased and they're used basically in the usage of really vital goods such as tomatoes and those kinds of things are being used and they're not exempted. I'll stand for any questions from members of the committee. Mr. Rice?
I think last week.
What number are you?
Oh, sorry. It's number 10.
If memory serves me, I think it was Thursday before we went away for 2 weeks. We've had several bills in here dealing with farm exemptions of one type or another. The last one I remember was the one on the equipment that deals with blueberries and other things like that. And it would appear to me that what we're doing is just another implementation further on down the food chain, literally, of exemptions for these types of things. I mean, I guess my question is more philosophical, Mr. Chairman, and that is, where does this stop?
I don't know, Mr. Rice. I can't tell you. Be honest with you, a lot of this has to do with the profit margins that are involved with those commodities. The profit margins on those commodities are so small that a change in these, just a small change for these sales taxes make a big difference to the farmer, especially when you're looking at, you can look at just for instance, the chicken industry. 1/10 of 1% of 1 penny can mean millions of dollars in one day. And the same thing holds true in the commodities exchanges, and I'm sure that people here are very much more knowledgeable in the fact of the commodities. But when you're talking about things like tomatoes and cucumbers that are basically very, very, for lack of a better term, they can spoil very easily, and they're going to spoil quick if you don't move them. And over a period of time in the grocery stores, they even go to the bad. They got to sell them quick, and without selling them and getting them moved, they lose all the money in it. And if on the buyer end, if you're buying this stuff, the profit margin even falls even shorter because of the length of time in order to ship that, get it to the store for you to buy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was an adequate description. I appreciate that.
Any other questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Roll. What number?
I'd like to respond to Representative Rice. I've been here several years, and there have been many agricultural exemptions passed. And the reason for that is, first of all, agriculture is the largest industry in the state of Georgia. Secondly, for many years, agriculture has struggled to survive. We've lost all of our agricultural programs like peanuts and cotton and tobacco. And every little bit helps our agricultural community. And, we have many exemptions on the books for agriculture, but we're trying to keep an industry alive that is our top industry in the state of Georgia. And some of these don't look meaningful, but every little bit helps when you're struggling for survival.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Mr. Chairman, I'm going to let you take over since I was doing the bill. Okay. Basically, we're at the point now that I'm standing for a motion. Anybody want to make a motion?
I move.
I got a move to do pass. Got a second? A move and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? This will be passed on to the Rules Committee as a substitute, the committee substitute to House Bill 329. Thank you. Back to Mr. Chairman.
486.
That was 321.
329. I don't know that.
Okay.
And they're looking for alternative crop. That's what they say.
Okay, Chairman Royal, I'm sorry, Chairman Lewis or Martin? Anybody left? Sales tax, House Bill 237. Please, yeah, report to the full committee.
Recommendation, House Bill 237, LC 186352S.
Chair recognizes Chairman Chuck Martin to present the bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, House Bill 237 seeks to clarify an exemption on sales tax that already exists in state code. What it seeks to do in Section 1, I'll explain the bill and then take real briefly why it is necessary. But it seeks to clarify and expand the definition by adding "or equipment" in several places, and probably more pointedly changes the words used directly into "necessary and integral to" the manufacturing process. There currently exists a condition today where our auditors from the Department of Revenue are placed in positions where they need to be educated like plant managers or engineers and so forth to determine what is or isn't directly used in manufacturing. For instance, a conveyor belt is directly used, but it is deemed that a forklift might not be directly used because it could be used for something else, and it's not always directly used in manufacturing. So we seek to clarify that in Section 1 of the bill. Over on page 3 of the bill, we strike the phase-in provisions of this bill because those are no longer necessary. This exemption was originally phased in from 2001 to 2005, and that's just a cleanup section. Down on lines 25 through 35 of the bill, we seek to make any repair, replacement, or component parts. That's, again, a situation where there's confusion when our auditors are trying to determine what is or is not exempt. The last section on the back of the bill, page 4, makes it clear that the redaction or the removal from code, the phase-in period, cannot be claimed going backward by a taxpayer. In other words, when this bill is signed and goes into law, a taxpayer in 2007 can't go and file an amended return to get tax refund for 2004 or 2005 because that's not the intent of the legislation. They would live within the provisions that go in. There's a fiscal note attached to the property, to the bill. It does have a cost, but let me say this. If you look at the second paragraph, the second page of the fiscal note, how the fiscal note, the costs were arrived at started with a $3.2 billion capital expenditure in Georgia's manufacturing industry in 2002. And yet when you look at the estimated capital expenditure in Georgia in 2008, it's $2.92 billion. That's a decrease of $300 million, even though they applied a 2.4% inflation factor every year. The story, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, is Georgia is losing manufacturing investment, and Georgia is losing manufacturing jobs, and Georgia families are losing the income that comes from the manufacturing sector. I believe the passage of this bill will help us to retain that, along with the bill we passed earlier. Chairman Lewis brought 272 that limits the exposure of spikes in energy costs to manufacturers. I think it's important for us to keep those manufacturing jobs in Georgia and help Georgia families stay employed and keep that capital investment coming. Stand ready to answer any questions and ask the committee's favorable consideration of House Bill 237.
Gentlemen, yield for questions.
Yes, sir.
Recognize Representative Flood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Martin, you mentioned this bill simply doesn't clarification, I submit to you that it still leaves some ambiguity about what is necessary and integral. It doesn't really literally clarify it. It probably removes some question, but there are still some significant questions as to what then is necessary and integral. The other part of my concern is that unlike some other tax exemptions, this one I don't see where there's any return to the state. The exemption of we're losing $11 to $17 million in revenue. What does the state get back for that investment?
That's a fair question, and if I might answer the first part, first, Representative Flood. At the subcommittee this morning, we had definitions and examples used in other states as necessary and integral. I don't think that paperwork got passed along to full committee. That's propagated by rules and regulations in other states where this is in place, and it's fairly clear. I'd be happy to get you that, but I think the subcommittee came to the conclusion that if we included necessary and integral and allowed the commissioner to propagate the rules and regulations, that it would be made more clear, and there is a precedent for that in surrounding states. To answer your second question, and that is a good one, what would be the return? I think it's simply this. I know of a specific industry down in South Georgia that has lost the opportunity to get expansion because the component parts that are dealt with over on page 3 of the bill, when we are adding any repair, replacement, or component parts, but because those are not exempt in Georgia, they have lost the opportunity to get that expansion in that county. I believe it's Vice Chairman Sims, a company in his district. That's just one I'm aware of. I think that the question exists, and it's a hard one to completely quantify, but how many jobs will be lost because this is not in place by not expanding, or when, as Chairman Lewis said earlier today, when energy costs go up and the cost to fuel a plant in Georgia costs 7% more than it does in Tennessee, then that additional manufacturing capacity gets done in Tennessee instead of Georgia. As people lose shift time, they lose overtime, they lose shift days. So I do think this is something that we can do that will keep capital investment in Georgia. I think for me to quantify that exactly, it's very difficult. But if you simply look at what $3.2 billion would have been at 2.4% increase over the last 6 years, we would be significantly over $3.2 billion, and now we're lower than that. So I think this would be something that would help us to keep manufacturing investment and actually increase capital expenditures. Hard to quantify, but I feel comfortable it would do that.
Further inquiry, Representative Flood. Chair recognizes Chair recognizes Vice Chairman Sims.
I just appreciate the gentleman's bringing this bill. The company he's talking about in my area, Representative Flood, is trying to expand. It's going to bring anywhere from 300 to 750 jobs in my area, depending on how big and how fast they can do the expansion. That's a significant increase in the number of employees in my area. But they need the exemption on the dies. And because there are only 2 companies in the state that are doing the die for wax die type of operation now, they need the exemption so that they don't, or else they're going to move that expansion to Washington State or Oregon, and that would mean the loss of a lot of jobs in my area, but a big loss to the state of Georgia.
Thank you for that eloquent epistle.
Thank you, sir.
Any other?
I'm for it.
For the author of the legislation. The hours are getting late. My apologies to the committee and to the gentleman. I did not mean to condescend to his comments. They were all very well thought. Seeing no more questions, what's the? I'm sorry. Second. All right. Motion to pass. I have a second. Any further discussion? To pass by committee substitute, House Bill 237. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. No. Is that one, or did I hear one or more? One nay. Okay. All right. Mr. Sims, if you would take the chair, and I'd like for you to let me present House Bill 439.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Income tax chair, I believe it would be Representative Jones?
Yes.
Or Martin Scott? Representative Jones?
Yes, thank you. The Income Tax Subcommittee met on House Bill 439, LC 254781, and we reported the bill out favorably.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm going to turn it over to our chairman, Representative O'Neill, to bring his bill, House Bill 439.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring this legislation before you actually with a great deal of excitement. This is the sequel to some legislation actually that we did a couple of years ago. We had been asleep at the switch in this state, this vastly beautiful state, and such a wonderful situs and forum for the entertainment industry. And we've been asleep at the switch for quite a number of years and let other states get ahead of us with competitive advantages with tax credit packages and inducement packages to bring entertainment. We have, and we had already in this state, tremendous resources in the entertainment industry right here in the Atlanta area. Turner Broadcasting Company and other large, mega, very, very successful entertainment industry folks. So we had the resources here, but we just didn't have the deals that the other states were offering to lure the like the movie productions and the serial TV shows to the state. I don't think it was coincidental that all of a sudden nobody was making movies in Georgia anymore. Nobody was. I think the last TV sequel was Matlock, which went back in the early '80s. It was because they just get a better deal or create circumstances elsewhere in a more favorable economic climate. So what we did 2 years ago is we established a new kind of a credit package for the entertainment industry. And what I liked about it the most was all the money had to be spent before the credits were granted. So in other words, we had gotten the benefit. There was no speculation on the benefit. The computation of the money spent and what it did to the economy, the taxes that it generated, and all that went into that, the folks that were employed and everything, that was all paid for in advance. So the state had its goodness out of it, not except for any residual benefit, which is very interesting, and I'll explain that in just a second. Before the credits were issued. And the way the first bill worked is the core credit was 9%. If you came to Georgia and you did production, you'd get a credit of 9% of what you spent back. If you did that in a Tier 1 or Tier 2 county or area, rated area, where we thought we needed the business the most, you got an additional 3% credit. And if you hired Georgia people, in other words, if you didn't bring your own folks, but you created jobs for Georgians, you got another 3% credit for a total of 15%. And 2 years ago, that kind of put us up fairly close to the top as far as competing with other states in this industry. The state that comes to mind, everybody always talks about, is Louisiana. They seem to have the most aggressive credit arrangement for the entertainment industry. But what we've seen over the last couple of years since we passed this legislation is a resurgence of entertainment industry in our state. I've got some figures here, and I'm glad to pass them out if anybody wants to look at them, that have been provided me by some folks that represent this industry and keep up with it. But 2006 production year, an economic impact of $448.3 million. And that's up from, it's actually $291 million in combined productions and $251 million total value of all production budgets. And we think that made more than a $4 billion effect on the state's economy. And that was just in '06. And what that doesn't take into account is this thing called the residual value of these things. I mean, and I still get tickled every time I tell it. I mean, you shouldn't laugh at your own jokes, but I'm amazed at how many people will pay money to go to Savannah and look at a park bench because that's where Forrest Gump sat and got the box of chocolates. I mean, that's a big thing. People go to Juliet, Georgia. They've just packed that place at lunch every day, and to see where they made fried green tomatoes still. And that film was, what, in the late 70s. So I'm amazed. And when we were debating this in subcommittee, Representative Abrams, who's had a lot of experience and has personal knowledge of the entertainment industry here in Atlanta, I think in a representative capacity in her past professional life, understands the magnitude of the resources that Georgia and Georgians can garner. So what this bill does is simply expand our package in almost a revenue neutral way, probably a revenue positive way, especially if you integrate any of the economic benefit, because we're talking about billions here, into getting us probably the most competitive in the country now. And so I think we can expect, if we get anywhere near the same ratable increase in revenues that the first bill did, I think this bill, where we've upped the credits, we've taken out the requirement that it being a Tier 1 or Tier 2 county, so that, people can choose where they want to be in Georgia. Obviously, we try to guide folks to where we need it the most, but we won't guide them there to the extent that we'll run the business off. So, I mean, there's got to be some reasonableness in that regard, and that's kind of the way we looked at that. And I remember Chairman Royal brought up, because he represents a rural area, and obviously we have designed a lot of these tier counties to be inducements to get folks into the rural areas. And we hope we'll still be able to do that with this, because I think our rural areas are going to be where they're going to want to make these. They're beautiful rural areas. The farmlands and the Butler Brown landscapes are going to be where a lot of these movies, I think, are going to be made. But at any rate, this bill gets us up to a credit limit that puts us probably cutting edge in the entire country, and I would ask the committee's favorable consideration of the legislation. And yield for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any members of the committee have any questions at all?
Yes, as I indicated in subcommittee, I'm very excited about this bill as well. There was a question asked in subcommittee that I thought would be very important to raise here, which is the issue of the fiscal note and the IM plan model that's used, and why it shows a loss as opposed to the positive revenue that Chairman O'Neill spoke to. I think it's important to note that the IM plan model is one based on New York and Los Angeles, where you have an actual industry, a film industry, where the infrastructure is there, where they have had several successive years of creating this infrastructure. Taking that model and applying it to Georgia is a bit of a misfit, because Georgia is now in this sort of intermediate state between being a dynamic model and a static model, meaning that it is more analogous to call our film industry tourism than it is to call it a stable industry. We don't have the same infrastructure, but we get the benefit of people coming in with all the economic benefits that come with tourism, but we have enough of an infrastructure to be treated as a burgeoning industry, an incubating industry, if you might. And so I think it's critical for us to think about this in the context not of the $6 to $8 million loss that would be true if we were truly an established industry like New York City, like Los Angeles, but instead we are more akin to tourism industry, where you do have these economic benefits that come not only from having the industry in town, but you get the benefit of lodging, the benefit of pulling out labor that we do have. We bring new people here, people who stay because they realize that we have a growing economy in the film industry, and I just think it's an incredible opportunity for the state of Georgia.
Thank you, Representative.
Mr. Chairman, I find this to be a very interesting bill and a good bill. And recently, I guess it was a couple weeks ago, we had the folks from Sherwood Productions came and addressed us in the General Assembly, and that was their second film, Facing the Giants. And they're a local company, low budget, I guess, as well, you would call it, and based in Albany. Would this help them in any way, or would it help foster any more productions from them or other local grown production companies?
Especially, certainly as they get larger, it will. There's a floor of $500,000 in the bill, but and obviously that's to sort of separate the real production companies from maybe the hobbyist. And I'm not saying they are, because they are a real production company, and I've seen their film, and it's outstanding. And they're coming. I think they will be one of the first ones to be able to really utilize this in a big way. Yes.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, it's time for us to entertain a motion. Do I hear a motion? Got a move? You got a second? Second. Got a move and a second. All in favor, show by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? It's passed, and we'll move on to the Rules Committee, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Which one, please? Next on our list is House Bill 361. It is a committee substitute, and it came out of, I'm not sure, tax reform. Can I get the chairman of tax reform? Give me a report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 361 was reported out today with a due pass as a committee substitute recommendation from the Tax Reform Subcommittee.
At this time, I'll turn it over to the author, our chairman, Chairman O'Neill.
Thank you, Chairman Sims. Two major propositions in this bill. It comes to us from the Revenue Department, House Bill 361, that is, and I'm reading from LC 186250S. I hope that's what everybody has. The first one has to do with qualified research expenses, where we issue credits for research and development expenses. Heretofore, there's been a requirement in order to glean these credits that you show profitability within the last 3 years of when you were spending the money on R&D. Obviously, it's almost an oxymoron. If you're trying to develop something, you're not selling it yet. It's difficult to develop profits if you're spending money on developing things. So we've had this wonderful, grandiose credit in the code, supposedly to incentivize research and development in Georgia, which has been worthless because of this requirement that you show profitability, which would have to be created at best, and I'm sure there's been quite some schemes to try to do that. But at any rate, what we've done is we have removed the prerequisite requirement that you show profitability for these R&Ds, and we have moved the credit from 10% of nothing to 6.5% of something. And the fiscal note on that, and again, that would be very speculative, I guess. I mean, they would just happen to be almost guessing, which is we do a lot, I think. But the key motivation here is truly to incentivize research and development. And out through 2011, this would impact the budget by negative $8 million. That's the estimate that they've given us. So it's not a tax raise; it's a tax decrease. But in a very reasonable, like $1 million in 08, $2 million in 09, $2 in 10, $2 in 11. So it's a fairly insignificant hit. And if it does do what it's designed to do, which is incentivize incubation of R&D, and I can think of some areas in Georgia to where we really are on the cutting edge right now. Pharmaceutically, we've got some inoculations going on at some of our major research universities, and also privately that are exciting breakthroughs. And we saw in the General Assembly just a month or so ago the fellow that came with the turf grass that you now can water with salt water. I thought that was intriguing. That took much money and many hours of research to develop that, and that's going to have a Georgia brand on it. I mean, that's going to be really neat. That's already being sold all over the world. So there is a lot of benefit in us participating, partnering with the private sector and the public sector in the R&D area. That's what the first section does. The second section has to do with our wonderful port system. I mean, what can you say about the Savannah ports and the Brunswick ports that's not good? That's been just one of the most incredible success stories of the world. economically for this state, and we are a leader on the East Coast now in that regard. And we just had to get up to date the way we calculate the base year for port traffic credits. We were using a fixed date of something in 1997, I think it was. And now we're using a rolling average beginning January 1st of this year, but an average of the total net tons on containers. Using a date certain, even on a year or more contemporary, really doesn't do justice to the economic cycles, and obviously January 1st is a holiday. Now, it might not be for all the mariners that would be coming in there, or the workforce, but it would be, that certainly would be a untypical business day since it's a holiday. So we use an annual rolling average going forward, which I think is certainly a fair way to clean up that code section and continue to incentivize our tremendous success story in our ports. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield for any questions.
Any members of the committee have any questions at all? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion. All right, I got a motion to pass. Do I have a second? All right, this will be passed by substitute. House Bill 361. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? We'll hand it over to the Rules Committee. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Committee, again, thank you for sticking with me. I think we have one or two more propositions, and that'll be it. Hopefully we'll get those fairly quickly. I have a report from the subcommittee chair for House Bill 486.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Ad valorem tax subcommittee met on 486 twice, and yesterday passed out with a due pass recommendation, House Bill 486.
Chair recognizes the distinguished chairman of the Judiciary, Chairman Willard, to present his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's always a pleasure and honor to be with your committee. I have some handouts, if I might, Mr. Chairman, provide these for the committee's benefit.
Sure.
You all right? There's actually two sets.
This is the last bill.
We have been before the subcommittee on this bill, Mr. Chairman. I want to give some background to your full committee members. It came to my attention sometime this past summer that we had a system in Georgia that I think is the only thing left like this, because it's what I almost refer to as a fee system. And I call it that because what we're doing is, or what we had allowed rather, is the tax commissioners of Georgia had a provision in the law that allow them to effectively receive direct compensation. And I say by direct, it's money they receive and it goes into their pocket. It is money that is not something that is accountable for. And I'll tell you the way it comes about is this. As you look at your sheets, you've got two sets of sheets. I'll call one of the small print on it. The Association of County Commissioners of Georgia, at my request, did a survey, as did the Georgia Municipal Association, of all their members. And the reason I asked them to do this, I wanted to find out throughout the state where we had counties contracting with cities as a means of collecting municipal taxes on behalf of those cities. And, of course, the Tax Commissioner's Office being the entity through which these taxes were being collected. And we have quite a few of them. It shows on here, if you look down the list, it identifies by categories. You have a contract with county for tax collection. That means the county and the city have contracted. It shows the various counties where this is occurring. The next column says they pay the tax commissioner extra in addition to the contract. You have those counties identified. And it shows how the next column, how they contract, which means the parties contract through intergovernmental agreements, or there's an agreement between the tax commissioner and the city. In effect, those places, you may have even some where you do the tax commissioner and the, let me back up, the county with the city and the tax commissioner. It should be a three-party agreement for these taxes to be collected. All the counties having tax commissioner offices. Those offices are staffed by the county through the county payroll. They are supplied as far as all their equipment, et cetera, through the county by county budget allocations. And so what you have is really, when these taxes are being collected, they should be going through a process of the tax commissioner as a party with the county and then with the city for the collection of these taxes, where the money comes from the city into the county, which is what is done in most cases. What you have happen, though, is the parties will sit down at the table, reach their agreement, walk outside, and the tax commissioner may say, oh, and by the way, in addition to what we've done as far as your contract with the county, I want you to pay me a sum, and here's my contract for the sum that you're to pay me directly. You go to your next larger printed sheet, and what this identifies is all the places in Georgia where this is happening, and the total is on the back page. We have almost $300,000 of this amount being paid by the cities directly to a tax commissioner. Now, there's one county that I'll say is the most egregious on this point, and that's the county where we're sitting in right now. There's $175,000 being paid to the tax commissioner directly by cities, 2 cities in Fulton County. And I submit to you this is improper public policy. It should not be permitted as a means of being done. And when you look at the legislation, ladies and gentlemen, on House Bill 486, we're making a very minor change. The way it reads now under line 19, it says, notwithstanding the provisions of any law, the tax commissioner is authorized to, as previously said, contract for and to accept, receive, and retain compensation from the municipality. So, in effect, he could receive direct money that goes not into the county treasury, but into the tax commissioner's pocket. And this is not what we should be doing as far as policy in the state. All the change we're making is to say that notwithstanding these other provisions, the tax commissioner is authorized to accept, receive, and retain compensation from the county. So, in effect, as they sit at the table, the county commissioners, well, wait a minute, you're putting more of a burden on me as far as personal obligation. He can receive something as far as the county saying, well, fine, we realize that. We're supplying all the staff, we're supplying all your supplies, equipment, office matters, and if you feel there's something more that you're entitled to, we can adjust your salary as far as giving you a additional amount of money for reason of taking that on. But it should not be something that the city is feeling they are under an obligation to do directly with the tax commission. I think that covers it in a nutshell, if I might say it. Brief as I can make it.
It's just another nutshell summary by the chairman. Thank you.
I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Chairman Martin, do you have a question for the author?
I do. To the author, I'm trying to understand this. Well, first let me ask this question. In Fulton County, I only see the city of Atlanta listed.
Also Sandy Springs.
Okay, that have a contract with them. And because I don't ever recall us having a contract with him when I was the mayor of Alpharetta.
I don't know how long the practice has been ongoing, Chairman, as far as this happening in Fulton County. I received the information about the city of Atlanta directly from the city of Atlanta, talking to their people in the budget office. Now, I believe the city of Alpharetta bills and collects their own taxes, do they not?
We bill and collect our taxes, yes, sir, we do.
So you don't have any need for the tax commissioner's office to be of service in Fulton County?
No, and my only question that is the city of Atlanta and the city of Sandy Springs, if they're using the service, if they didn't like the, I guess my question is, why do we feel like we have to legislate the ability to enter into a contract with the tax commissioner? They have 7 elected members of the city of Sandy Springs. If they don't wish to enter into a contract, they're not obligated to do so. They can collect their own taxes.
Well, they don't have to. They can collect their own taxes. We have, by election, as many cities have, said, let's join the services in with the Fulton County for that benefit as opposed to duplicating the service. So if you look down the list, the long list, you'll see a lot of cities and counties work together on that basis. There's no demand that the city of Sandy Springs or the city of Roswell or, in your case, Alpharetta do that. It was an election that we have. But when we did it, we then found out by talking outside the the setting up of the table, the making the contract, the tax commissioner says, oh, by the way, here's my contract. So there's a sense of coercion that you place yourself in and say, well, if I don't sign the contract with the tax commissioner, what's going to happen as far as my taxes being collected timely, bills going out timely, money being transferred timely?
Well, I guess that's my point. I mean, that's a whole issue with which you can deal. But I mean, if you enter into a situation where there is a contract working and it's right, and we're basically prohibiting the authorization of a city to enter into a contract. Are we not prohibiting?
No. All we're saying is the appropriate standard is to be for the county and the city with the tax commissioner enter into a contract, which they do in all these cases, but then the tax commissioner says, I've got an additional contract, separate and above what is being done between the city, county, and the tax commissioner. If I explain it this way, I'll use Sandy Springs as an example. There's a contract with Sandy Springs and Fulton County to which the tax commissioner is a party. It's a three-party agreement.
And that's the only, not to interrupt the gentleman, but that's the only one that the city of Sandy Springs is required to sign in order to have their tax collected.
Correct.
And they choose to sign the other one with the tax commissioner, do they not?
Well, they don't really say they choose it. They feel that there is a coercion because the tax commissioner has the capacity of now saying, well, if you don't sign this, in effect, the city doesn't know what's going to happen as far as the ability to collect. And the real policy part of it, Chairman Martin, is these are funds not going to county treasury. They're going into the tax commissioner's pocket individually.
Well, and again, not to be argumentative with the gentleman, but we're not doing anything in this bill to keep that from happening.
Yes, we are.
Well, no, it says he's authorized to accept, receive, and retain compensation from the county.
So he can negotiate as a party to that.
So the same matter, all you'd be saying here is that the county has to sign the contract where he gets the additional money.
Yes, that would be the appropriate way to do it because his salary is paid through the county. The services are being provided through the tax commissioner's office, which is funded by the county, not by him individually.
And that's, it's a late hour, I don't want to belabor the point, but this says authorized to accept, receive, retain compensation from, and we've changed municipality to county, for such additional duties and responsibilities in addition to that compensation provided by law. So he still is able to get additional monies over in his salary.
Exactly.
We've just taken out his ability to contract to receive it. Is this taking away the tax commissioner's ability to enter into contracts on any other matters for the delinquency, collecting delinquent matters with outside firms? Is it taking away his ability to enter into any contracts? Is it going to have any detrimental effect on our counties around the state for their tax commissioners to enter into contracts in order to collect taxes?
No, sir. None.
All right. Representative Abrams.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I know the answer, but just as a matter of clarification, upon passage of this bill, will the existing contracts be void as a matter of law, or will they simply be prospective and not allow the entry into new contracts?
I think they'd be voided as a matter of law because the policy states they cannot receive money as direct compensation from the cities.
Not void ab initio, though, void going
future.
forward. Chairman Gray.
Yes. Representative Willard, I'm trying to understand this as Representative Martin. Are there any instances in which a municipality collects taxes and contracts with a county? Does the inverse occur?
Always. I think all of them are done as far as if the look at the list is the first one I've talked about.
Well, I mean, I know we have, I guess you're talking about the tax commissioners elected in a county.
Yes.
Are there cases in which, let's say, in his example, the city of Alpharetta is in some way collecting taxes on behalf of the county?
No.
Okay, so it's always municipalities contracting with a county tax.
The cities have the ability to elect individually whether they wish to go through and use the county services through the tax commissioner's office for the collection of their taxes.
And that leads me to wonder, I was just curious on, let's say, line 19, where it, at the end it refers to tax commissioner, saying the tax commissioner is authorized to contract, why you might not have said the county is authorized to contract, and that way the funds would go directly to the county treasury, and then they could distribute to the tax commissioner.
We're saying the tax commissioner is authorized now to receive whatever may be additional compensation for this extra service provided by him if he's taking on extra duties as a means of with the county payment.
Right, I understand that. I was just curious as to why at the end of line 19 you might not have stricken the words tax commissioner and replaced it with county.
Well, you already have the ability to read further up in the paragraph. There's already the authorization for the county and cities in conjunction with the tax commissioner to enter into contracts. This last sentence is being modified to say if there's going to be anything as far as additional compensation to the tax commissioner for the service, that is something he will receive through the county. If I might go through an example, let's say in a county, I'll just use one, let's say Coweta County. We've got a number of cities you read, looking at the first page, where there's Grantville, contracts. There's a contract between the city and the county, and then the county receives a compensation of $1.25 per parcel. Now, if there's a cause of the tax commissioner to incur additional duties because they're working for all these additional cities, that's something the tax commissioner can sit down and negotiate with the county, saying, no, we're doing all these things extra. Yes, you provide the staff, you provide all the administrative work, you might say, and supplies, but I'm also incurring some additional responsibility to do myself, and I should get some additional remuneration. That's what he is negotiating, in effect, with his employer, but not with the people who are coming in and getting the service, which is the cities. That's what's changed by this bill.
Yeah, and I understand that portion. They may make that agreement with the county, but how would the county therefore receive the additional compensation in which to move that over to the tax commissioner to pay for their additional services?
I'm not following your question. I'm sorry.
The way it is now, the tax commissioner, I guess, makes the agreement with a municipality. In this case, you're saying the tax commissioner would make the agreement with the county in which they work with because they're extra duties. So now is the county required to make the agreement with the municipality in order to receive those additional funds?
Right. The county and the city make the agreement. The county and the tax commissioner may also make an agreement which provides whatever additional payment he is to receive.
Okay, that leads me back to line 19, where I was just thinking that replacing tax commissioner with county would have sort of kept it flowing through.
We're only pointing out that there's an authorization that the tax commissioner can receive, not required to receive, but can receive something additional, that payment, if it is done, will come from the county. If we read the entire sentence, the tax commissioner is authorized to accept, receive, and retain compensation from the county for those additional duties and responsibilities in addition to that which is paid to him or her by law.
Right. I've read that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
yeah. I was just, my question has to do with the language that you've stricken. If you left it and you replaced the words tax commissioner with county, then it leaves it all within the county general fund negotiated with the cities.
Okay.
Thank you.
Contract for and to accept from the county such additional?
Yes.
Could be. That would be another way. I think both of them accomplish the same thing.
Chairman Jones?
Same thing accomplished.
Ms. Jones, do you have a question?
No, I got a question.
Okay. William, what number?
16. Representative Willard, I
Yes, sir.
believe that I've expressed concern in the subcommittee meeting about this, and in the way the bill is worded, that we are actually in the salary increase in business by allowing the tax commissioner to personally take some of the monies that he's contracted with the municipality on. I don't have any problem with the money going to the tax commissioner's office. Now, if the county board wants to give this tax commissioner additional compensation, that'll be up to them. But to tie it into what he does is a side job, really. He got elected to be the tax commissioner. This little deal with the municipality is really a side job, and whatever he brings in. Now, if he got up there as an individual and processed these additional duties, I could understand maybe using some of that money. But his staff is going to be doing it, and that money should go in his office to take care of the increased responsibility, not him.
Correct.
So I don't think we ought to get and say, what we're doing in essence, and I've had this come up before on another issue, and we fought it in the same type situation where he's taking money personally.
That's right.
And I just don't think that's right. I think it should be put into the office and used for whatever additional expense his office incurred, but not for him personally.
Yes, and that's what this bill does.
Well, the way I read it, you've eliminated the municipality negotiating that money that the municipality puts in. He puts it into the county treasury, and then the contract then is made between the tax commissioner and the county commission to get an additional compensation. But again, it's a personal thing, and it all stems on what he did with the municipality, is making the contract with them.
Chairman, if you go starting on line 15, read that sentence. It begins at the very end. Any contract authorized by the subsection, and this subsection is authorizing the collection of municipal taxes through the tax commissioner's office. Any contract authorized by the subsection between the county governing authority and a municipality shall specify the amount to be paid by the municipality to the county.
Okay.
Which amount will substantially approximate the cost of the county providing the service to the municipality. So you're correct. The contract is going to call for, because the county is paying all these expenses in the tax commissioner's office, it goes in the county treasury. That is to be expected. Now, if there's anything done as far as any compensation for that tax commissioner, he sits down with his board of commissioners of the county and says, I'm doing some additional personal duties as part of my work in the tax commissioner's office because there's 3 or 4 municipalities I'm doing work for. I asked that some supplement be paid for that purpose, and that's between him and his employer, the county commissioners.
Well, how about let's just eliminating the contract portion of it, and he goes to the county commission and says, I've got to increase responsibility. I need a salary increase.
Mr. Rogers, you could strike on line 19, that entire last sentence. It's just recognizing that there can be a payment by the county tax commissioner, the county commissioners to the tax commissioner. It authorizes that under that, beginning on line 19, notwithstanding.
Okay.
Let's have a little problem with it.
Chairman Rice?
I'll waive off.
He waives. 28. Mr. Lindsay?
Yes, sir. My question to you is this, Mr. Chairman, and on line 12, why are we allowing the tax commissioner to continue to have an effective veto over a contract between the county and the local government over the agreement to raise taxes?
Well, it is a part of the extra duty that he's being imposed upon him. So that's been the provision in the law, that he is to be a party, recognizing that you're going to assign to him additional duties.
But if he continues to have that authority, doesn't he, continue to have the ability to demand that his salary be raised a certain dollar amount from the county, but simply from the county now as opposed to the city in order to do this extra duty?
So you're suggesting striking out that phrase on line 12?
Well, I would think that if you want to affect what you're trying to do, sir, that you would need to take out that clause, whether that section.
I'd be certainly open to that being amended. Mr. Lindsay, taken out subject to approval by the tax commissioner of the county.
Yes, sir.
And then we leave in what's on line 19, that the tax commissioner can still be allowed the extra compensation for that additional duty he's been imposed upon him.
Any further follow-up, Mr. Lindsay?
No, that was my question.
Okay. Mr. Scott, first, hang on just.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to follow up on what Representative Graves was saying a minute ago on line 19, and it may be clarified somewhat with what Representative Lindsay is trying to do, and I'm not sure. Maybe some of you attorneys can enlighten me on this, but I agree with Representative Graves that the word tax commissioner, the words tax commissioner on line 19 should be stricken, and to make it clear that that the compensation should go to the county. And I mean, to me, it still looks as though this money could be construed as going to the tax commissioner, and I would feel more comfortable if that were clear and it just said this money goes into the general funds of the county.
Well, it is going to the county. I'm sure I may not have a problem either, as y'all are, but I'm saying the tax commissioner, because of what he is being given as extra duties, could receive additional compensation from the county, but not from the municipality. And the purpose of that is saying, well, he goes in and talks about needing a supplement to his regular statutory salary. See, all of them have a statutory amount they're given, regardless of whether they do work where they're doing beyond the county tax collections with cities or not. So if you say now you got 3 or 4 cities you ask them to do, I feel like I'm entitled to something, so there can be what we call the supplement to his salary for that purpose from the county, not from the city.
Right. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, obviously, I think this committee's, at least seems to be the spirit of the committee, is to be in agreement with what you're trying to do here. Do you not? I think it would be clearer if we said on line 19 the county instead of the tax commissioner, and then authorized to, and leave the contract for and to. Take off the portion that strikes that, and then remove county on line 21, and just make it clear that the county is the one that receives that compensation. This would go make it clear, would it not, that this money is not for any individual's additional compensation without going to the county or to the General Assembly for additional compensation.
If you word your amendment, I'll try and see if that's something that's going to clear up the question you have.
At the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, perhaps we would.
Mr. Chairman Martin.
Just now speaking here with Representative Lindsay, I think, and I'd asked Chairman Willard if he knows this. Careful about striking, in line 12, subject to the approval of the tax commissioner. Is the tax commissioner's office obligated to do the tax digest of the county without a contract? I'm asking that because I do not know that at this point.
Go back to that question. Is it authorized to?
No, is it obligated? I know we elect a tax commissioner. My understanding is that office is set up separate by Georgia Constitution than the county government. Is the tax commissioner obligated? I'm hearing ACCG is shaking its head over here. So my question was just to be careful about the subject to the approval of the tax commissioner. There has to be 2 parties to a contract. If the commissioner itself, the commissioner's office was not obligated to prepare a tax digest, if we made him unable, he or she unable to enter into a contract, would we render the office unable to do its job?
The county tax commissioner, I'm not sure if I follow what you're saying as far as preparing the tax digest. They're not obligated by now. I think if this phrase was stricken and there was an agreement and contract made between a county and a city, that is an obligation that is then placed upon the tax commission by this very code section.
And my question was, and I think I got the answer at least from Ms. Mueller from ACCG and somebody from Revenue, that a tax commissioner's office is obligated to work at the will of the commission.
The county commission.
Yes, sir, the county commission without
Correct.
having to enter into a separate contract. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Lindsay. Ms. Tumlin? Okay, hang on just a second.
Without the tax commissioner's permission. That's what I want to simply make sure of.
Okay. Ms. Tumlin?
Those were my 2 questions.
Okay. All right. From what I'm talking with legislative counsel here, that if if we do some of this stuff now, what you're going to be doing in effect, and from the way I understand it from council, is you're not going to allow the county tax commissioner to gain any extra money from anywhere if you do some of this that we're doing here. Now, we don't need to let the wheels fall off this thing. We're just trying to. I think what we're trying to do, and what Mr. Willard's trying to do, and if you all agree or disagree, it's going to be at the committee. But I don't think we need to tinker with this tax commissioner and his ability to do contractual work. Now, I think we need to. If I go back to the offer,
Chairman, I think we want to say that the cities and the counties can come together and say, the city says, please help us in collecting our taxes, and we'll pay you for it. It's like a customer. And the county says, fine, let's enter into an agreement, and we do that. Now, the tax commissioner is the one who's faced with the responsibility in his office to do the billing and the collections.
Correct.
And so as he does that, he can turn to the county and say, you know, I'm doing a little bit of extra work myself because of this. I think I'm entitled to a supplement. Well, he can negotiate that supplement with the Board of Commissioners, which is the county, as beyond what I'm getting as a statutory amount. I agree with what Representative Lindsay says. I think that should be only the two parties making the determination of whether the cities will get that service or not, because the county will be the one to say yes or no to it.
My question, yes. May I ask you a question? Does a tax commissioner, are you aware, Anthony, and you're a noted lawyer, does a tax commissioner set the tax digest for the municipalities?
No, sir.
They do not.
They're given, the tax assessments are done by the tax assessor's office. The amount is then rolled over to what is doing the tax digest as far as preparation of bills by the tax commissioner based upon whatever the millage rates are set.
Okay.
Am I right?
I think you're saying that. I just want to make sure that what we're doing here. All right. Okay. Or do I hear them? First, do I have a motion on the bill? All right, we move to pass on the bill. Do I have a second? Okay, now it's time for amendments. Mr. Lindsay, do you want to try to put an amendment together? Yes. Okay.
My amendment would be to strike line 12.
What number are you, 28? All right.
Yes, yes, sir. Strike from line 12, the comma, and then subject to approval by the tax commissioner of the county, comma. Strike that phrase.
Just strike that phase.
Yes, sir.
Phrase, excuse me. I'm getting late. Okay, that's the only thing you want to do?
Yes, sir.
All right. We have them.
And I support that.
Are you saying that as a form of a motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I have a second to the motion? Have a second? All in favor of the amendment, which is, if everyone understands, is to strike at the comma at the end of contract on line 12 all the way to the comma before 4 in line 12. Does that understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay. 4 or far, whatever one. I don't know. Far is something that's burning down where I come from this time. I just wanted to cut. We had to have some humor here somewhere. Okay. Does everybody understand the amendment? Does anybody have a question on the amendment? Would anybody like to discuss the amendment? Okay. If not, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? No opposed. So that we have amended it by striking subject through county in line 12. Any other amendments? Okay. Mr. Graves, what number are you?
18. I would like to go back to the line 19, 20, and 21, and in order to sort of complete the circle and make sure that the negotiations are between the counties and municipality, strike the words tax commissioner on line 19 and replace with county. Restore the words contract 4 and 2 on line 20. Restore the word municipality on line 21 and strike county on line 21.
Okay, I
so
understand.
that it would read, notwithstanding the provisions of any other law, the county is authorized to contract for and to accept, receive, and retain compensation from the municipality for such additional duties and responsibilities to that compensation provided by law to be paid to the
All right. Mr. Graves, I'm going to get legislative counsel to explain what we're doing here, because there's a question as to some other strikes that have to be made. 21.
All right, Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without entering into the policy aspect of the suggested amendment, if, with the committee's indulgence, the sole purpose of this last sentence, it's intended to be an override provision for virtually all the counties that have the salaries set by local act. There's usually phrasing in that local act that says that the salary set forth here is in full and complete satisfaction of the performance of the duties of the tax commissioner. So if you change this sentence or eliminate it, then you have removed legally the authority for the tax commissioner to receive any extra amount for performing these duties, if that's your intent.
And if you go up, I think what you're talking about, Mr. Graves, is really covered any contract authorized, starting on line 15, very end of it, any contract authorized in the subsection between the county and a municipality to specify the amount to be paid by the municipality to the county. So the contract, by its language, will provide for the payments, whatever is to be done for this extra service going by the city to the county. This last sentence is just talking about should there be anything done as far as supplements for the tax commissioner. He works that out with the county, not with the city.
Mr. Gregg?
You can answer your question first.
Did you answer your question?
Well, he has a question.
Okay. Mr. Williams?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to direct this to the Legislative Council.
Okay.
The amendment proposed on line 12 are the county commissioners. Now, the tax commissioner is a constitutional elected officer. Can the county dictate to him an additional duty that's not, if he doesn't want to do it?
Well, I think what would be happening is the duty would be dictated pursuant to this general law. He simply would be removed as a party to the contract. But this subsection A would be the legal authorization by which the Board of Commissioners could require the tax commissioner to perform this service.
Would that be legal?
Yes, sir.
And then he would require it would default his.
Yes, sir. If the contract were entered into, he would be required to perform those duties. Now, if you're going to proceed with this amendment, I would recommend that you also strike on line 21 and 22, in addition to that compensation provided by law to be paid to the tax commissioner of the county.
Let me ask you a question. Go ahead. 18.
Yes, sir. Under current law, are tax commissioners allowed to receive additional compensations from counties currently?
Where it is specifically authorized either under general law, like this sentence, or local law.
But I mean,
but only in those events.
And because this, the way it's written, in current law, it only references they can receive compensation from municipalities. So if you're suggesting that they already receive compensation from counties in addition to,
for the performance of other duties. You know, for example, where they serve as tag agents, there's additional monies that they're authorized to receive by general law that would be in addition to the statutory salary that might otherwise be set.
Okay.
And this sentence was heretofore intended to authorize them to receive, in addition to whatever monies they're statutorily receiving, the additional amount that they would be getting for performing these duties under this contract for the city.
Did I answer your question?
I think so, and certainly my intent is not to take away their ability to receive extra compensation for extra duties due to collecting taxes.
I think that's what your amendment's going to do.
And if that's what the amendment and in your advice, Mr. Counsel, there would do, I would rather not move forward with my amendment, but I'll listen to other conversation as well.
Okay. So are you pulling your amendment at this time? Because that's what we're on now.
Yeah.
Okay. He's pulling his amendment. Okay. 28. Ed?
No, that was my concern. He pulled the amendment.
Okay. All right. So he's pulled the amendment 17. That's Mr. Roy?
Yes. I'd like to ask Mr. Willard if this sounds familiar to you as regards to the Judiciary Committee.
Very Very much so. Chairman Royal.
Mr. Chairman, I know you've had a day, and I know we're at the point now, we've got an amended version of your bill, so we're going to be looking at making this as a committee sub.
Correct.
With this. At this point in time, is there any more discussion among the committee members or any questions to the author? Okay, if not, I entertain a motion at this time. I got a motion do pass. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. As a substitute, again, we're going to be substituting it from the amended version from what we just amended from Ms. Lindsay's amendment. So it will be a committee sub. All in favor of the committee sub, say by, and we're going to waive any objection to waiving printing. Okay, we'll waive printing. So we're going to pass this or fail to pass this as a committee sub. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? It's passed on to the Rules Committee somewhere along the way, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations. And if y'all don't mind, we're going to go to South Georgia. We stand adjourned.